First of all, I wish to thank all the speakers because actually, I mean, it's just below 1 hour that we started and we managed to have 5 speeches, so well done.
So now questions, but remember the penalty thing, okay? Our distinguished panelists, Mariella Bottiglieri, Managing Director of Giuseppe Bottiglieri. Mariella, have you got any question for any of our speakers?
No, to be honest, I would like just to thank Mr. Lauro for organizing and thank you for all the presentations. Merci. I'm actually a commercial person. I do chartering every day, so I'm not really an expert on insurance. So my role today in this session was more of a listener. And therefore, the only contribution I could make to the debate on this topic really relates more to the last steps of the former session rather than this one correctly. I refer in particular to the debate caused by the proposal of Mr. D'Amato about kind of blaming the clubs for insuring old tonnage. As much as I sympathize with the idea and I would like to see that, unfortunately, I have to say that I simply think, and I'm sad to say that, it's not just non-practicable, it's simply impossible. If you clubs insure old tonnage, it's because you're getting money, as simple as that. I don't see why you should leave it on the table. And if you are insuring those old tonnage, it's because there are charterers fixing those old tonnage. Otherwise, the old tonnage would not be there, would not be used. So as much as I'm a ship owner with a new tonnage, and I hate old tonnage, I don't see why the blame should be put on you. If we're talking about utopia, then we should say that we should oblige charterers not to fix old tonnage. And this is simply, as I said, an utopia. So my wish, and therefore I conclude my very brief contribution, is that what I would like to see in the industry is not that old tonnage is not insured. I would like to see ship owners, not the traditional ones sitting today in this beautiful location, but the private equity, parvenu-driven new ship owners placing further orders. Thank you.
Grazie Mariella.
Vorrei solamente chiarire che in effetti i clubs non guadagnano con le vecchie navi, ma perdono, perché sono quelli che fanno più danni.
Purtroppo non riusciremo a cambiare i clubs e quindi dovremmo cambiare la testa dei noleggiatori. Quello dovremmo cambiare.
Ma direi che comunque anche se cambiassimo la testa dei clubs poi troverebbero comunque qualcun altro che li copre, quindi non sarebbe comunque la fine del problema. Se possiamo andare, poi Peppino continuiamo l'anno prossimo su questo. Ok, continuiamo.
I think the difference between us and Peppino is that Peppino has got a long-term vision. We arrived to the middle term. Peppino has got a long-term vision. We arrive maximum to the middle term.
Correct. So thank you as always, Peppino, in an event to keep us hot on these issues. So let's move on to the next one. Rocco Bottiglieri, Insurance Director of the Scorpio Group. Bozzelli. Sorry. It's getting late. It's getting late. That's the whole thing. So Rocco Bozzelli, Insurance Director of the Scorpio Group. He always asks questions, so I would be surprised if he hasn't got one now.
I guess you would like me to say I have no questions, so knowing that we are running short on timing. Very quick couple of considerations from James' presentation. I'm glad to see that the frequency reduced quite a lot, and looking on it as you know, on the shipowner's side, it's good news. Because as I see the insurance, maybe in a very simple way, it is a way to protect, you know, balance sheet of our company, and especially for very important and large claims. So if we have too much frequency, it is maybe an operational issue, and it's also, you know, a duty of the risk management to reduce this frequency. So this is the takeaway I took from your presentation, which to me is quite a good news. On the other side, looking on Chris' presentation, it was saying club must mutualize large claims, is what we are doing since ever. Now I see that the retention increased to 10 million. But what about mutualize large exposures? So what we see in today's market, it's a process of consolidation, and we talk a lot about the consolidation. It happened quite a lot in the last months on the insurance world. If you look, for example, XL, Catlin deal, or more recently, Amlin, Mitsui Sumitomo. So there's a process of consolidation. So my question is, are we, forecasting a consolidation on the P&I world? And what about, let's say, the mutual thing of the P&I clubs and the fact that you purchase together reinsurance, which is a commercial market and not a mutual one? So this is a bit what I would like to ask you. And on the D&O, being Scorpio a stock list company, of course, for us is a very important topic. So I don't know how many ship owners non-list they have D&O in place, but it is indeed something which is very important if we look at other industries, as you correctly said. Yeah, so that's more or less.
Grazie, Rocco. Now, one logistical, technical issue. Andrew and James will have to rush away because they're going to miss their flight in any event, otherwise, not in any event, otherwise. So please join me in thanking them, okay, because we will have time. And see you next time, okay?
Also, I mean, we forgot Gillian. She has a plane too, and. So I'm afraid we will have to answer some of the questions of the panelists now for lack of speakers.
We have Chris.
But anyway, so the next distinguished panelist is Alessandro Morelli, Chief Insurance Officer of SIAT, and I hope he has something to ask to the few left.
In fact, I would have wished to ask a few questions to Mr. Taylor, which is not possible now, but I must say that anyhow I would have refrained to do this because I was very much scared from the threat from Federico to be penalized for asking silly questions. And since I think it is very easy to ask a silly question, particularly on law issues, I thought that probably I would rather make a very quick general comment concerning the point of view of Harlem machinery insurers. Marine insurers today are quite concerned on a worldwide basis about the technical results produced by the marine line of business. The market is currently very difficult to manage due to the large overcapacity which we witness, which is here today and which probably will stay even in the certainly short future and maybe middle future. Hence the importance for marine insurance, and I think this fits quite well in the title of this session, Managing the Risk. Hence the importance, I was saying, for marine insurance to give more and more importance to those aspects of risk improvement, risk mitigation, loss prevention, which could help, from one side, in making technical results more profitable in spite of the soft market, but at the same time being beneficial to the economic system as a whole if these actions help in avoiding accident. By some way, this is the approach which the marine insurers are trying to follow on a worldwide basis and, under this respect, within the scope of the IUMI. IUMI, as you know, is the Association of Worldwide Marine Insurers. Its role is fundamentally to act as a focal point and a representative voice on behalf of the marine insurance industry in dialogue with other stakeholders and maritime institutions and organizations. To this purpose, IUMI issues from one side position papers. The most recent one concerned the loss of ship records in the sale and purchase of ships, and keeps an updated list of current topical issues, which is done through the political forum, which is a technical committee which provides suggestions to the executive committee in order to address these topics. Today there are 17 issues in the long list. out of which we find places of refuge, Arctic sailings, maritime cybersecurity, container ship safety, a number of issues by which drawing attention and recommending action on these issues is by some way the contribution that the marine insurance industry can give to the difficult situation which we have by some way mentioned also this morning when we were talking about poor quality ships and so on. Thank you.
Thank you, Alessandro. I think, you touch a very sensitive subject for all the people of the industry. Definitely it seems that this free fall I was mentioning before has no end, and of the insurance premium, and of course underwriters have all the right to be worried about the results. On the other hand, as long as there is such a liquidity, in the market, it's difficult to predict any counter trend, due also to the fact that you know better than I do that, serious losses have diminished and the total losses have diminished. The excess of liquidity is there anyway. So, that is a good news for ship owners, certainly not much for underwriters, and it's bound to continue, I'm afraid. So, the next panelist is a claims expert at Swiss Re Corporate Solution, Andrea Papaioannou. So, claims are reducing, so less of a job for you, it seems.
Yeah, exactly. This was just my consideration. Listening to what Ms. Bottiglieri said, I cannot agree more. Being on a claim side, I would see with pleasure a reduction in old tonnage written by insurance. This is not happening, and we have seen a few moments ago that new capacity is taken into the market, notwithstanding the results, which Alessandro can tell better than me. It's like, I don't know, 20 years in a row without any profit in the hull. Okay, so we are fast approaching 20 years without any profit, but still new players are coming in the market. So there's something, I'm in the claim side, not in the underwriting side, so I cannot understand this. I'm not even trying to understand this. But the fact is that there will be always someone ready to write business, no matter how bad it looks. So we need definitely something for a higher level from a, we cannot ask commercial bodies or class or P&I to intervene to stop this, let's call it madness. We need something from an higher level. My other consideration, which is, again, I'm steering away from questions because otherwise I would be definitely spotted for a silly question. So I will make another consideration. I'm very glad to see the new Marine Insurance Act, because it's been for long years a problem to explain our friends from the UK that most of the time the question about warranties has as an answer as depends. So depends was not an acceptable answer in the UK. Now I'm happy that warranties, as we used to know, are not anymore an issue. Now it depends also for our UK friends. So this is it's good to see that the continental model, the Italian model, as far as warranties are concerned, is becoming more and more the UK model too, and the irrelevance of the breach is becoming relevant also in the UK system. Thanks.
Thank you, Andrea. Thanks a lot. Next speaker is Andrea Poliseno, director at Polias SRL. Do we have I think he has a question.
Thanks, Mauro. Yeah, in theory it was my brother, but he's been called back for a duty, so I'll try to take his place. And thank you. It's not easy. I have like 10 questions for like a panel of speakers like you, but I'm not sure I can go through all of them. So maybe we'll go there tomorrow in tomorrow's session, right? Tomorrow morning session. And I have just one question that, getting back to Captain D'Amato, Peppino D'Amato, about the old tonnage. I understand that which is not really straightforward and easy to cap the insurance of this kind of old tonnage on the P&I side, especially. On the hull side is quite different. But what I do believe, I've heard some comments, for example, from owners that they've been kind of, let's say, challenged from banking, from institutions about, for example, running cost. What I mean is, for sure, all tonnage should be taken care when a P&I rate has to be put down. But the way it is managed as well, beside the claims record of a fleet, is very important. What I mean is that in the last years, companies that have been grown in a very big way, and compared to, for example, old-fashioned companies that are in Italy since many, many years, which I do believe is a big strength and quality of the management of the crew and the way they're treated, the way they treat the vessel like their sons, you know, like their daughters. So they call the vessel like the daughters, the family names, which it means that they really take care of them and the way they manage the vessel. This, I think, is very important. And what I heard is that, for example, this financial institution, they were saying to some owners, your running costs are too high compared to others management company. Why? Because they take care of her. It's their daughter, right? So they have spare parts on board, they have other pieces, so which means cost reduction for insurance, obviously hull, but no P&I as well, right? Because if you have a vessel which is in the middle of the ocean without the spare parts, so you cannot change, it could be a problem for both sides. So I think this is something that for the Italian ship owning company is something which is remarkable compared to, for example, other kind of, let's say, business and area. And is there any evaluation that you do as well on this, beside the, let's say, the records? And the second question is about vessel, let's say, increasing size. So if you take care as well in the claims model, in the new claims model that you have to go through, and then the rating models, since the severity is going, it could be very high, and the magnitude of it could be very high. So sorry, it would be just these two questions. Thank you.
Just two questions, which is basically what is the meaning of P&I? Yeah. Take them in age, because that was mentioned a few times. I don't really know what other clubs would do. For the UK club, the average age for bulk right now is 8.5, and for tankers under 10 of what's in the club. And there are very few fleets, it seems, that have all their ships exactly the same age. And many of the long-time members of the club are companies that have planned programs to build a new ship to replace old ships. And it would be very difficult for a club to have a well-run member with a good loss record who has a plan to bring in new ships and retire their old ships, to say, well, even though you're running very well, we don't want ships of a certain age. We do have a quite aggressive inspection program to look at the older ships. So for the UK club, we looked at 450 ships with our own inspectors last year out of 3,500 in the club, and age is a factor. But one of the statistics, and I don't have it today, is if we looked at the ships which have a kind of highest burning cost, the initial claims per ton, it's actually our ships less than 1 year of age are significantly higher claims costs. And so there is almost an argument that goes against, you have to try to get a member to have the ship for the lifespan of the club, and to look at the member. And if you wanted to look at premium, I think I mean, I talked about reinsurance costs and the like, but the single biggest cost will always be the claims experience and claims record. And I think your comments are perfectly valid. With a lot of the long-standing family-run companies in Italy, they do have very good records, and I hope that is reflected in their ratings. I don't know if that answers.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that from an machinery point of view, okay, we are in the same business and we both know exactly what it is. we said in the morning that there is no way to put a cap either for a PNI or for a machine underwriters. The only institution that can do that is a regulator, so that's, I mean, it's totally beyond the chance of HAL or PNI underwriter. But I mean, if we look from a machinery point of view, not necessarily, I mean, underwriters make more money on new buildings. I mean, there is a serious question whether it's better. Today there is a tremendous appetite for new buildings. Every underwriter wants new building, and the premium is squeezed to very, very minimal amounts. So the question is, does it make sense to cover a new building 35 million exposure for $40,000 a year, or it makes more sense to insure, I mean, an old lady, well-maintained, with 7.5 million exposure and maybe $150,000 to $200,000 premium. That is what we talk about. So there are underwriters at Lloyd's that exclusively focus and concentrate on all tonnage well-maintained, of course, putting the proper premium and serious deductible. So that's, I mean, it's purely a commercial evaluation. And more the market will be aggressive on the new buildings, from the underwriter's point of view, there will be some who will have an interest for older tonnage, inevitably, because they have a chance to make some money, while on new building at that level is very, very difficult to make money.
Thank you, and I agree with you completely.
Okay, good. We were supposed to have another panelist, Simon Williams, North of England. Apologies from him. He's not here. I think he was missing his flight as well, so he must have disappeared. So apologies on his behalf. I think we are over. And any other question from the floor? There it is. John?
Thank you, Chairman, for being so efficient. I was going to ask Gillian Musgrave how she managed not to fall off the stage, but she's not here anymore. She's gone. But I do have a couple of questions. One is important for us ship owners because strict but limited liability is one of the cornerstones of our ability to operate. And a lot of rule makers and policy makers consider this a kind of privilege of the ship owning community, which is, in a sense, was introduced at a time when shipping and ship regulation was very much pro-shipping. So they consider that this is a kind of unfair, if you like, or unwarranted privilege. On the other hand, we have consistently argued that strict and limited liability is better for the claimant than unlimited liability. And added to this, however, there is the perception that there is much more capacity or much more cover available than what the strict and limited liability conventions define. So my question is, how can we, and how can you, the insurance industry, going into the future, maintain the kind of credibility of the argument that strict and limited liability in the long run is better than unlimited liability?
Chris, this is for you. You are a lawyer and you are an underwriter.
I put up that slide which early on, which listed many of the conventions, and I think the reference for those with strict liability is that the clubs are issuing blue cards, which is a kind of an anticipatory guarantee. It says the club will pay the claim almost regardless of fault. And, you know, it's personal view, I think that's a good compromise for those conventions, to be able to have uniformity of law, to have predictability for the group, international group, and ship owners to have a political voice at IMO and others, and to be a convention partner. You know, and so far, I think that gives the industry, the ship-owning industry and the P&I clubs, a good platform to work with. I can't think of examples where the strict and unlimited has been abused or led to a different outcome than you might want as ship owners. So it's a personal view, and I think strongly supported by the P&I club boards, that international conventions with that kind of compromise is a good thing for the shipping industry.
My question, though, was whether you think that this is sustainable, whether you think that we're going to be able to secure this in the future, because we have had challenges, as you know.
I would certainly hope. It's a political matter. So ship owners have control of the clubs, and I think as ship owners you will want to vote for continuing those regimes. Maybe the HNS convention is not yet in force, and the clubs have said, yes, we will provide the blue cards, the strict guarantees. Where the clubs are responsible, and industries and government and the IMO see a responsible party and payment regimes that work, I would say I hope it is sustainable.
Another probably very difficult question for someone is coming. Mr. Jacobson, want to say something?
Well, from my experience as director of the IPC funds during 22 years working with the clubs, this question came, of course, up many times. And if you have let's say, an oil spill in a port from an onshore tank, that tank owner is liable without limit. Whereas the tanker in the port collapses and causes pollution, it is limited liability. And to sell that argument today in the political climate is not very easy. And I think that it will be very difficult politically today to introduce in any new field of law limitation of liability. But ships are different, or are they? That is an old Elias Steele once said, and I think that experience has shown the value of the limitation of liability because the ship owner, the P&I clubs, of course, their whole insurance business and the risk assessment is based largely on the fact that they normally are entitled to limit liability. And if that was taken away, I think the whole P&I world would have to look very differently on the questions of risk. And of course, I'm not a P&I expert, but that's the feeling I have had over the years, that it would fundamentally change the whole P&I world and thereby not be in the interest of ship owners. And I don't think it would be in the interest of insurers either. We must also remember that when you have tanker oil spills, and hopefully in the future with HNA spills, we of course have the international funds backing it up over the ship owner's liability. And ship owners sometimes lose the right to limitation. Not very often, but it happens. And so I think that although the situation is somewhat odd from a layman's point of view, and it's very different from any other field of law except the nuclear law, it has proved, well, transport law in general, I think it's proved its value, but to explain that to politicians is nearly an impossible task. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We all agree with what you said.
Any other question from the audience?
Sorry, I want to ask, this might be a stupid question, so I may get the penalty, but I wanted to ask whether P&I clubs at the moment cover ships that are picking up migrants and are therefore automatically in breach of SOLAS, for instance. If there is an accident or a pollution, or if the ship sinks even, is the ship covered, both by hull and machinery and by P&I?
I can give you my understanding of that. That is a warranty at the moment, so that a ship is classed, all say the statutory certifications are in place. In the moment in which there is a breach of a statutory obligation, then at that stage, cover would not operate as it stands at the moment. Now, unfortunately, Andrew is not here, because I would have been delighted to hear what he has to say about it, because the way in which I understood what Andrew was saying, and Chris, maybe you know a little bit of what is happening behind the scene on this, was that the current construction of the new Act is basically meant to be protection of the consumer from the point of view of making a sort of an anti-technicality approach by the insurer to the assured. Now, I see at the same time, in the recommendations which are in there, and what the recommendations which the clubs apparently are taking on board, there is a suggestion that you are willing to contract out of that. So basically that you would like, or you would prefer, to leave things as they are at the moment. And on this one, I don't know. Say, can you add something, Chris?
Well, I heard the example this morning of the ship with 11 crew and 1,000 people. That was quite an extreme. I haven't personally had to work with that because the clubs cover the life salvage, the sorts of easier things. But I think your question is more fundamental, that the ship has now come entirely out of any form of class. I was interested in one of the practical comments made that it is not always a matter of option, that there could be a government order, which I think then adds another dimension, that you have a ship owner ordered by a competent authority to do something which puts his ship out of class. I think that would be a more difficult one. I don't know. Hull and P&I will probably have a different response as well, and I think certainly where there's omnibus rules and where ship owners could make a decision about what they thought a reasonable and practical owner should do, and a fellow member of their club, I would expect them to have a lot of support. I mean, that's how we ended up changing the UK club's rules on life salvage, is that we didn't have that rule. A ship owner had picked up some refugees, this was a number of years back, and it didn't feel right, so the directors paid the claim and then asked that the rules be expanded to make that a matter of right. But I don't know entirely your scenario of what will happen tomorrow if that happened.
So, I mean, you are asking also from a hull machinery point of view. We got the privilege of having Mr. Morelli, Chief Insurance Officer of SEAT. He can give us his advice.
Well, I think the answer would be more or less the same, since at least today the vast majority of hull machinery covers are granted according to the English clauses and consequently subject to English legislation and jurisdiction, which means that not only the classification clause, but for instance, you mentioned the SOLAS Convention, there is according to the Marine Insurance Act and consequently to the policies which are bound by this, there is an implied warranty of legality, and since SOLAS is now international legislation, a breach, a non-compliance with an international convention, in my view, would represent a breach of the implied warranty of legality on a hull machinery policy.
Then you need a good broker to sort out the claim, but that's, I mean, is next step. Mr. Jacobson.
Sorry being persistent, but I think what was said now is probably right, except for pollution, because I don't think there can be any doubt whatsoever that if in a saving of life situation, whatever breach of SOLAS and MARPO the ship owner does, his liability is strict for oil pollution. The club has to certify that, and the club has also strict liability for it. So whatever is done under SOLAS and MARPO is irrelevant. Whether then the ship owner might lose his right of limitation is another matter, and I don't want to argue about that, because I think that would be then again in a very serious conflict with the P&I clubs, and I don't want to do that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Lauro, I was just wanted to, I don't know if I'm allowed by Federico, of course, but it's not exactly a question. I noticed this new liability claim in the US, and I think it's quite troubling on the one hand. On the other hand, I was at an Intercargo presentation the past week, and somebody from Oldendorf was explaining to us with a lot of slides that the science behind the can test for iron ore or nickel ore liquefaction is completely false. And he is arguing that you need to put the cargo on board no matter what, since the science we're using is wrong. So there's a lot of pressure on the vessel to do things commercially that they can get into trouble about later. And somehow it seems that if the penalty of ignoring common sense just for the sake of expedience is high enough, as Ms. Musgrave mentioned, perhaps it's something behind which the owner can again use as a card to stop the pressure on the vessel and on the master in the port. So it seems that we have opposing trends reaching a new balance where prudence used to dictate the outcome. So any view on this?
Can I say? It's certainly correct what you're saying. I hope it is not a question because this will be a heavy penalty. I can give you what I think about it. Is that a balance can always be found in these kind of things. It's a matter of willingness, and eventually it's down to the people who is handling the problem. It's not even a matter of places where you are or the law applicable in that place and so on. From time to time, it's the officer who is contesting a certain kind of thing. He may be a reasonable person or he may not. And there is a little bit of good luck in everything. And I think good luck, it's important to avoid the kind of situations you are referring to.
Okay, I think we are over. I mean, it's now the time is over. Actually, it's. The distinguished speakers have been already congratulated enough before. I would say that is basically the speaker and the panel should congratulate with this very attentive audience that managed, to stay so many people in an afternoon session. Started quite late. Thank you very much to all of you. Thanks for all of us. It was a great interactive debate. We'll see you next year.